I'm hearing you correctly, the evolution in psychotherapy is moving from something that's, say, more analytical and to something that is more experiential. And there's
Correct.
an evolution also then in some of these more traditional spiritual spaces in going from getting away from the world into being embodied with
Yeah.
whatever my realization happens to be, that it's something that can work its way through my body into my habits, into what I create in my life.
Yes. Hmm. Yes. I don't wouldn't use the word just habits, because habits tend to be a more, you know, kind of a more, I would say, a more conscious uh, way of living, rather than working through habits, but working through a sensitivity to how am I being in the moment, and what in the moment is, do I feel in the moment contracted in some way or anxious, or and how to work with that in the moment in a way that releases us from that narrow approach to life.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I hear you using in the moment a lot, like,
yeah, right,
and
yeah.
so that's standing out. And so one thing that strikes me about that is being embodied is something that we can really only do in the moment. So that evolution of being embodied seems to
Mm-hmm.
align in that direction. And you mentioned about the evolution with Western psychology moving from this more analytical space to an experiential space. This being embodied into what my experience is right now seems to be the central hub of all these things you're
Yeah,
talking about integrating.
yes. Um, it's the central hub because it's the source of all healing, I would say. You know, um, what is being in the moment about? It's when we're in the moment. Let's talk about just sensory awareness, sensing. Um, if we're listening, listening happens in the moment. It's not in the future or past. If we have a proprioceptive sense, if we sensing in our feeling in the moment, if we're sensing into the sense of energy, or what people used to call the vibe, the people in the alternative community, the vibe of the moment. All of that is happening now. Everything else that we're doing, what the mind is doing, is then interpreting that sensation and relating it to something in the past. And oh, this is an uncomfortable sensation. Well, what do I do to get rid of it? For example, or this is a pleasant sensation. How do I maintain that, or keep it going, or have that sensation that I. So the mind is focused on the past, remembering the past, and sort of interpreting based on that, and it's focused on the future, about how can I find happiness, how can I find contentment, how can I find peace. So there are these two systems, from my point of view, operating. There's this, um, what I'm talking about, sensing. I'm using that term. You could use other terms, sensing in the moment, and then there's the planning, sort of the part of us that's wants to be in control, and make happen what we think will be good for us. But the problem with that part of us, the second part that I just mentioned, is that we believe that happiness and fulfillment is in the future, or it's something that we don't already have. Everybody, I mean, you ask anybody, most people, everyday people would say, yeah, I'd like to have a partner, I'd like to have better health, I'd like to have this and that, and then I would be happy. So the mental part, what I'm referring to as the mind or mental part, the sort of the personal, intentional self, is another term for that, is always looking as though we don't have what we need, and if we could do this, we'd get it. So there's always efforting. This intentional self is always efforting, trying to get rid of certain qualities that we don't like about ourselves, trying to get better qualities, and it thinks that it's something external to the moment that will be satisfying. And so because of this is what causes all of our, no, maybe not all, but most, at least of all of our psychological upsetness and anxieties and depression and all these different disturbances. And we have different treatments for depression. There's pills, but they don't work very well. And for anxiety, there's other pills that mask the discomfort, the unease, the anxieties, the efforting, the stress of that efforting. And that's the way most of us live our lives. No one's taught us that there's another way, that's free of all that efforting, that's simply aware right here and right now. Now, at first glance, you might say, well, okay, so what's the big deal? Why is that so great? Okay, there's less efforting, I get that. But as you begin to deepen into the moment and into the now, into the present time, you begin to feel a relief, first of all, from all that efforting. Wow, I didn't know I could be just still and be here. It's such a relief. And so that kind of focusing or meditation or self-inquiry, whatever name we want to give it, brings that sense of relief. And we begin to discover that there's a quality of happiness that we begin to feel. So that I don't sit down to meditate because it's good for me. I sit down because it feels wonderful. And so there's a sense of ease and a sense of happiness. And we begin to find happiness doesn't come from trying to get this thing, which I might have temporarily, and I might be happy for 10 minutes or a day or a month, and then lose it and be unhappy. But if we go inside, there's this joy, there's this happiness that's just present here. It's just here. Maybe I could compare it, a simple comparison, like maybe there was a time when each of us might have had, maybe we're lying on the beach and we're just relaxing and free of all our thoughts and worries, and we just feel so comforted in the moment. Or maybe someone is an athlete running a marathon and stops thinking about the future and the past and just there in the present. And so there's a word called flow, being in the flow that people who are in that realm are talking about. These are all different facets or ways of coming into the moment.